Right, good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock on the 21st of July, and here we are back with a real question time. We've been having some exciting times over the last 3, 4 weeks, and we haven't been able to actually get the programme up and running because so many people have been so very busy. I'd like to introduce Mick from the Guardians 300, and with me, a common law peace constable, and also Professor Dolores Cahill, live from Dublin,
Hello.
and who's been on an adventure of her own. So, is first of all, Dolores, would you like to tell us about what's been happening in your world over the last 3 weeks? I know that you've been very involved in a little thing called an election, which is on the lips of everybody here about some of the ways that you was treated. So can you fill us in on how that went and how that went for you and what you considered, were some of the prime things that were happening? Hello, Dolores. Right, Mick. Well, as I don't know what's happened.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and it's not in Dublin, so the internet is not so good here. So for me.
Hello. Hello,
Hi,
Dolores.
guys. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Did you hear the bit where I asked you if you could let us know how you've been doing over the last 2 weeks with the election and everything? So fill the people in the UK in on it, please.
Yeah, so there was just what's called a by-election in my constituency, but it was very interesting. But I think one of the most interesting aspects was around the counting of the ballots. So I went there in where I vote, and normally the police should be there to take the ballots, and they weren't. We ensured the police weren't there, and the ballot boxes were taken away by private security into a white unmarked van. And then when I arrived at the election count the next morning at 9 a.m, I wasn't let in to view my election votes to be counted, which is, and the reason they gave is because I'm not wearing a mask, but that is, of course, entirely unlawful. And the election returning officer never came down to meet me, even though I asked to meet him. And really, members of An Garda Síochána don't have any authority outside of an election count. They can only, under the law, be inside. And all of the members of An Garda Síochána, our police force, they are required to have their warrant oath cards to show them, and not one of them showed their warrant oath cards. So it was very irregular, and they didn't allow me in. So in a way, what it is, it's not about me, but for the next general election, the whole aspects around the vote was entirely irregular. And I suppose we will need in Ireland to review how the whole voting takes place on the basis of that. And there were some videos of what happened to me, and it got about 500,000 views within a few hours that I wasn't allowed in. So I think what we've heard, in America, as we know, there were issues around the voting. And we see in all of our countries things that would never have been countenanced, before a year or two ago, that the police would never have acted that way, and that there would be, proper supervision of the voting ballots. So I think it raises issues about our societies and our democracies that are not just happening in Ireland and America, but that people should be aware of what's going on around the world. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know about you, Mick, but I looked at the behaviour of the police, and we've seen that very similar behaviour in this country. I mean, could you fill us in on what's been happening with you and the Guardians and 300 as regards the police and the way they are treating some of us?
Well, I think one of the things that came across when I watched Dolores, and lovely to hear from you, Dolores. One of the things that came across more than anything is what we've experienced, which is that there's a lack of education. They can certainly quote what is legal, even though sometimes it isn't, but they can't really quote what is unlawful or lawful. What really jumps out to me is that they even don't know some of their own rules of engagement, or they are blatantly ignoring them. And I think the former is true. If you look at the sergeant that gets involved, the others simply follow suit. And as we've said before, probably one of the worst things you can do in a situation like this is follow orders. For your own sake, no one wants to have a go at the police. We just expect them to behave lawfully. I mean, after all, that's supposed to be what they stand for.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I think until that gap is addressed, then you don't know what you don't know until you find out. Until you find this out, and this is clearly a piece of work that we are addressing with the Guardians. Then they're gonna behave in a way that they believe is legal, but actually is exposing them to problems in the future.
Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of invest on that point. Recently on Monday, we noticed an upgrade in the level of police involvement. Should I say, and their tactics changed when they found out that there was less people than on one of the big marches. I noticed a very different attitude, Mick. I don't know about you. But
they become more aggressive. And equally, if you hold dialogue with them, you realise that a lot of them are not really police. They really don't know. And I think that's not by chance. You're even seeing some people with two badges on. Officer, constable. Some people are wearing two different badges on the same uniform, and the two are completely different entities. So you start to realise that ignorance is bliss, and if you get a brief, and you then realise you've got the upper hand because there aren't that many people around, but actually, as it turned out on Monday, the people that stayed there, I think, stood up for themselves far more than they probably would have done if there'd been, even more there. I think people are naturally getting fed up with being ignored. No one wants to get involved or get embroiled in rioting because riots, are the domain of the unheard. But the problem is, if you're not heard, if you're being ignored, and you know that these people are breaking the law, what other opportunities do they give to actually even exercise their own model to explain? There's no explanation in that. Quite often they're grabbing people without any formal warning. There's no engagement. They don't even follow their own models, John. And I think as they start to get more confident based on numbers, then they simply show you their lack of understanding and lack of experience.
Yeah. I'll just on a similar point, we've had I know that privately we spoke about this, but a few people have had a few problems getting involved with the common law court. I believe that there's been some problems there. I just wondered if you would like to enlighten people, because a lot of people are waiting for stuff to arrive back from the common law court. And there's been some problems, hasn't there?
Yeah, we've had that. We're having the whole of the back end of the website rebuilt because they've been almost taken down on a number of occasions, which doesn't help. And of course, we've got to make it so that can't happen. And so that is one of the problems that we've had, in so much that they're rebuilding that. So people might have been trying to achieve some functions on it and not quite been able to do that. We're also having a complete overview of everything that is outstanding. So once we've got the website up and running, we will then have an overview of any backlogs with regards to cards or anything of that information and certificates. and then everything will be made good. I would say within a couple of weeks of us being up and running. At this moment in time, I know that John is unwell. John, myself, and one of the other guys, one of the web builders, we all went down at the same time with flu or whatever it was. But equally, I know that John's still unwell. So once he gets back on his feet, then we're in a situation where we can rectify everything.
Is that someone coming in?
Yeah, that's all right. That's just, I've just turned that off. Yeah, so that's where we're at with that. And you know, we apologise. It's just that to keep this thing secure and to keep it now functioning, bear in mind that John deals with over 180 countries, and that we are, some of our systems now, we're modelling them to put them into other countries. Yes, so a lot of throughput.
Oh yeah, it's massive, and as I say, it didn't help that there was, they've been, ill around there. Right, is also, Mick, is as we're experiencing, obviously this has had a knock-on effect on us rolling out the Guardians 300 training, which we're sort of getting to grips with now.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing some more trainers training sessions, I believe, aren't we, in the next few weeks?
We've got a couple of trainers trainings on the cards. We've got well over 60 more people that want to join us trainers, and the numbers are getting bigger. But we now have a training hub, and that training hub literally is the focal point. And it's got all of the elements that a training hub would need to process large numbers, and that's in place. So the training is going to roll out quicker than you can blink. And the bottom line is that we want everyone to have a level of autonomy, but with strategy and purpose. You know, there are other guys out there that are doing different trainings, and we've got the Article 61ers out there, and we've got a number of other organisations that are doing things like the lawful observers, and all of those are commendable. The challenge that I have is that if what you join does not make a difference to the momentum and does not alter the direction of something, then you're not necessarily making a difference. And of course, without giving anyone a hard time, because we don't mean to do that, one of the things that sets us apart from the other situations is we are growing very, very quickly from the ground up, and we are directing our strategies. We're already winning with some of the strategies that we've deployed. These are now going to be ongoing, and they're going to increase. So if we can, every job we do, if we can target that, and we can make a difference with each individual, that's going to be accumulatively, that's going to be a significant level of momentum going in the direction that we want it to go in.
Yeah, and as I said, we're going to be running police constable training sessions starting around the country now, as our trainers start to spread out. Which
we've got just short of about 40 trainers. That's a lot, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And we've got Newcastle now. We've got flipping Sheffield, we've got Leeds, we've got the South Coast coming online. So, and not so slowly. I mean, when you consider the time scale in which we've done it, it's phenomenal. And now that we've got a bigger mechanism in place to manage the numbers, that's going to roll out very, very quickly. But that shouldn't stop us from recruiting and getting as many people involved as we can get.
Yeah, well, it's what we're all on. There are also other aspects that are being held up by the problems that we've had with the website, is the common law healthcare, the common law court healthcare, the common law court schools. These are things that are all equally needed. And, as I say, hopefully we can start rolling them out in the near future.
Yeah.
There we got, I'll admit someone is coming in. Yeah. I don't know. Hello? I've admitted them. They're not. I don't know. Oh, Tara, that is Dolores. I believe it might be. Hello, Dolores. Anyway, we'll carry on. You know, as I say, it's like you know, we've been holding on at the UKFA because, and I know you have at the Guardians, because you know, we want to make sure that infrastructure is in place. Before we, you know, we could advertise trainings now, but if it's not, you know, it's not all working properly, it's gonna go off half cock, and I don't believe we can have a. There's a couple of people now in.
You've got Dolores in, but a lady called Tara wanted to come in. Who's that?
That is.
That's another version of me. I was trying to do it on different phones, guys.
Right. Tara Bumbier.
Apologies.
That's
the internet isn't great here, so apologies.
That's her code name. So Mick was wondering who that was. I know who it was. Yes, but yes. So we've been talking about the common law training in here, and I believe you've got some wonderful news about the common law training as well, Dolores. All right. We haven't got no sound. Are you on? Oh, she's gone off again.
Yeah, we had a meeting. There was about 45 people did days, John.
Oh, that was excellent. So how did the training go?
It went excellent. So we did it in the same type of scenario with, you know, for peace constables to be trained by them developing how they would react to scenarios like in hospitals or in quarantine hotels or around where people were requiring vaccinations, we'll say, for employment in schools. And then we also had retired military and retired constables from the United Kingdom, especially on the second day, go through all of the aspects of the training that was on day 2 of in the manual that we had. So I think people enjoyed it very much, but we are going to have another
I believe she might have ground to a halt there, Mick.
Yeah, it sounded like one of those batteries that was slowly sort of fading away.
Yeah, it was just giving in.
Yeah.
But that was, you know, I've spoken to Dolores earlier today about that. Mick, you know, oh, there she's back. She's back. You sort of run out of steam there, Dolores, as we was listening to you. It was. It's coming.
In order to do the additional work around the videos and potentially to do an assessment and
yeah, we're struggling to get that, but I think what Dolores is talking about is they did the first days, but because of the
yeah, so all of those people will be coming back again.
Yeah. Oh, she's gone again.
She's dropped out. Yeah.
It's basically what she was saying, Nick. Is that they because of the problems with the common law court, the videos that go along with the training, they didn't feel that some of the guys hadn't even been able to connect on to the common law, so they couldn't be made police constables at that stage. But everybody, 65 people she had initially, and about I think around 55 of those are going to come back and to become actually get their read their oath as a common law constable.
Yeah.
As I say, it's really an extension of what we were saying. But I wanted to now we're looking at it's unfortunate because there was quite a lot we needed to speak to Dolores about today. But Mick is, you work with a World Freedom Alliance, and you obviously get a lot of information. And what is your view on what the government's trying to do, this sort of false freedom that they're giving us now? And, all the time while they're giving us this false freedom, they're talking about, using the vaccine as an entry method. So the infamous vaccine passport, which they were never going to introduce, looks like it's already starting to rear its head.
Well, I think what we're witness to is just something called mission creep, John. And it's a very well-known technique in the military. What you do is you pre-teach what it is you want to come. You see how much of a reaction it gets. So you're literally scoping an idea. And then if you don't get too much of a reaction, you keep rolling until you get the reaction. Then when you get the reaction, you back off from the reaction and pretend you're not doing it. But by that time, the seed has already been sown. And people are now slowly but surely getting used to all of the ideas that they would never have accepted 6 months ago. So it's just a simple system called mission creep and scoping. So as long as they're doing that, and people are now, say again.
We lost you there for a little bit, Mick. I don't know where it went. Just for a second.
Yeah. So it's. Hello,
Mick. I think it was actually John that was having the internet connection issue. So although John was missing you, that was his internet connection, which is how.
Oh right, okay. Well,
so
carry
we're
on.
Back now, John. So we'll carry on. It should be okay.
Yeah. So basically, as I just described, that's called mission creep, John. And they scope an idea, and it doesn't matter how distasteful the idea is, because ultimately it's like any relationship. A relationship is created by you getting used to new ideas around the person with whom you're having the relationship. And if you like some of them, generally speaking, you might want more. And if you don't like them, you might sort of accept some. But essentially, because there's no one to actually to argue with, because if you think about it, you just have this entity that's giving you small seeds of where they want you to go, but you have no reply. And then all they simply do in that meantime, all the time they're throwing out these little scoping activities, they change the laws and they feed you things that make you realize you have no voice. And then they see how much you're prepared to put up with. And of course, when we say riots are the domain of the unheard, that's where they want, so this particular group want to take us, because if we riot, then they can justify martial law. So the last thing we've ever got to do is anything like that. We've actually got to educate the police, let them know that the information that they're missing and get them on board.
Yeah, I feel that's a sort of vital thing that we've got to do. Is sort of like a technique that we've got to employ is basically trying to turn the police.
Yeah.
And I believe that there'll be a big difference come the sort of end of September, October, when you find that the police officers on the front line, when people in their family are getting ill from from if they've had the vaccine or or even getting ill as I have done, Mick, and you've sort of said is when you're around vaccinated people, we're finding that there are problems with transmission of spiked proteins. I've definitely found that. And, you know, I not, and but you also have to be conscious that you don't want to get too carried away with that idea and believe that everything means that you're going to get ill. I mean, I suffer from hay fever, so I'm trying to put it down to the fact, you know, look, it's summer, it's very hot, it's hay fever season. So,
well, look, I mean, when I fell ill, I simply took huge doses of vitamin C, and I took some simple natural remedies. You know, you'd be amazed at just how effective fennel seed tea was.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, Mick, because I heard you speaking about that on Monday.
Well, fennel seed tea is a natural source of ivermectin.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to get over. And we have so many brilliant natural remedies which have just been lost over the years. Like,
oh, absolutely. I mean, vitamin C, if it's taken in certain ways, like liposol, if it's taken in, it's almost as close to having it delivered intravenously as it could be. But you're talking huge treatment doses of vitamin C, so like 5,000 milligrams a day, until you recover. And you know, the funny thing is I came to in no time at all. When I started taking the fennel seed tea, I was amazed at how quickly I came back, and I could feel the differences.
Yeah, I was listening to you say that. You said within a matter of hours, you went from very
10 minutes,
ill.
Within 10 minutes, I could feel the pains disappear from my legs and my back and my neck. You know, my neck was very, very tense, and just the pain. It was a bit bizarre, really, but we've got Kate coming in, yeah?
Yeah. Hello. Oh, well, let's.
Yeah, so I was amazed at just how having access to natural remedies, and you could. Kate will no doubt tell you how effective these are because of what she does. But I found that just with the fennel seeds, with the high doses of vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, and I came to in about 3 days. Well, and I believe I've made a complete recovery.
So I'd just like to add, why did you take a week and a half off? Right.
Just in case.
Good afternoon. Kate. We have the wonderful Kate Shemirani with us today, and we've had Dolores on, but unfortunately she's suffering some internet troubles. And it's very nice to have you on today, Kate. Sorry, it's so hot.
So hot here in the south. It's boiling, and it's even warmer in my house. It's really, really sitting outside trying to get a bit of breeze. So I'm, guys, I haven't got my nurse's thing on. It's just boiling. Which we shouldn't moan about the good weather because we've not hardly had any summer this year. But folks, when every single cell in your body has a vitamin D receptor, which is actually a hormone, and in your cells is your mitochondria, this little powerhouse that makes fluid, and it needs the electrical field from the sun to make that fluid in daytime. And that fluid also acts as the food, the nutrition for your immune cells, all of your fighter cells. So when you're told, do not go in the midday sun, what is it? Mad dogs and Englishmen stay out in the midday sun. When you're told, wear sunscreen, that's actually absolute codswallop. Most sunscreen is toxic. This isn't a wetsuit. This is the biggest organ of your body. What goes on it goes in you. I think it only takes something like 18 seconds, maybe less, for it to be in your systemic circulation. That's your blood supply. And every 3 minutes, your entire circulation goes to your liver, which is the site foreman, and it processes all these toxins. And I'll talk about that. So you should be out really in the midday sun when your shadow is short until your skin slightly changes color. So not burned, strip off as much as you can. Who cares what the neighbors think? And as much skin as possible exposed, and then you cover up.
You could get us banned, Kate, talking about stripping off.
But you store vitamin D. You store it.
Yeah.
And so you could not supplement. And remember, supplement means supplement. It's not, what you should be doing. It's what you do on top of what you should be doing naturally. The Creator gave us the light, and 90% of supplements are synthetic. So the sunshine, the rays shine on the cholesterol in your skin, and they convert it to vitamin D. It's further converted in the liver to supercharge vitamin D. You couldn't take that amount; it would kill you. Yeah. Then your calcium binds to your vitamin D and your D3, and your vitamin K2 tells it where to go. And in order to extract all your nutrients from your food, your good organic food, your stomach acid needs to be 1.5 to 3.5. And if it's not that, the little valve at the bottom of your esophagus won't close. You get that reflux. And that's where you should be guarding your thyroid. It's all connected. But as it's a sunny day, let's stick with the vitamin D. You store it all year round. Store it all year round, and your immunity needs it. And so what are they telling us? Stay out the sun. Skin cancer is mainly where you don't get the sun, on the trunk and on the upper limb, on the legs and arms where you don't get the sun. That's where most melanomas are.
And then people burn, and that causes,
Well, inflammation is a precursor to cancer. So that's what they're talking about, the sunburn. Sun damage. But if you do get sunburn, colloidal silver, which was in pharmacopoeia before pharmaceuticals came in, but colloidal silver is what's in all burns, bandages. It's in all surgical equipment because it's antibacterial, antifungal, antimicrobial stuff. But it actually, if you burn your tongue and you spray colloidal silver on it, it will take the burn out. So everybody should have colloidal silver 30 parts per million and 20 parts per million in their cabinet, and get a nebulizer, genesishealing.co.uk. Get from there, don't buy from big tech. Get yourself a nebulizer. And at the first sign of a cough, you do a nebulizer with maybe 10 parts per million or 30 in your nebulizer, colloidal silver, for 5 minutes, 4 times a day. As Mick's just said, zinc, most zinc in men is stored in the testes and the prostate. It actually inhibits that enzyme that converts your good testosterone into the bad testosterone that's responsible for that inflammation in the prostate and prostate cancer. So zinc is needed as well so the testes, the prostate, it's required by the mast cells in the lungs. It's required by the brain. 2.7 billion people in the world are deficient in zinc. It's chelated by glyphosate. There's only about 21 years worth left on the earth. It's been used for industrial purposes. But if you feel unwell, you've got a cough and a cold coming, can of tonic water, not your aspartame stuff. Cinchona bark, if you can get it, you boil it up into a tea. But if you can't, can of tonic water, adult dose, 150 milligrams of zinc for 7 days. The quinine in the tonic water opens the channel into the cell, and the zinc stops viral replication. So Mick was correct. And then he said vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams every hour for 10 to 15 hours for bowel tolerance, non-ascorbic. Ascorbic is not vitamin C. It comes from cornstarch and acid. And vitamin C in nature comes as a compound. It has copper, which is for all your elastin and collagen, has ascorbic acid around the edge. It has vitamin C in it, vitamin P and vitamin J. And I think the vitamin J is for your lungs and guarding against pneumonia, and your vitamin P is all your bioflavonoids. So get yourself a non-ascorbic 1,000 milligrams every hour for 10 to 15 hours to bowel tolerance, your zinc, and lots of fresh air, and get your colloidal silver, get a nebulizer going, and you can supplement with 5,000 international units of vitamin D3, take a K2 separately. There you go, boom, boom, I've come on and blasted you.
We're all good.
Well done. I'm not a nurse.
No, apparently not, Kate.
Suddenly, because I don't want to be with the corrupt NMC. I've forgot 36 years.
That's sort of one of the questions that we'd like to ask you today.
Oh, I'd just like to say before anyone asks, they don't teach you any of what I've just told you in my nursing. Never. You don't get taught any of that.
No, but that's part of the reason why you want to start the British Nurse. You started the British Nursing Alliance. And
Even in the shade, hold on. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
There we go. I look like I'm in Benidorm now.
Right. Oh, there, nice palm tree. But is what we want to say is, yeah. So, would you like to let us know what you've been doing with the British Nursing Alliance, and how that's coming along? Because you started and then it sort of had a little bit of a hiccup, and now you're back on track now, aren't you?
Well, it's registered as a company under charity status as Health Guardians, which is fantastic because it means that we can start bringing in physios and other areas of healthcare. And as the British Nursing Alliance, we aim to be collaborating with America, definitely with New Zealand, with Canada, and the nurses. The whole thought behind this is these are the people's nurses, so they're going to be trained in all naturopathic and nutrition as well. My dream is that in the future we'll also take students. Now, these nurses cannot be employed by one of these hospitals. They can go and work for them and do some hours, and they invoice them, but they are not employed by them. They stand alone with the British Nursing Alliance and what will be their code, and they will be completely accountable for their own actions, and they'll be registered under common law. And that is so that they are true advocates for the patient, not going along with the tyranny and the lies that we see now. They will be true advocates, feet on the ground. They'll be easily recognizable. It's my dream that they will be known as the elite nurses, the nurses that the public trust. And we will be doing clinics in towns, villages, cities, and that these nurses will be part of the community, so the community know them.
Yeah, well, I've been speaking with John Smith at the Common Law Court, and his idea is to have common law health centres, and obviously it would be a great idea that we have common law British Nursing Alliance elite nurses in those areas, which are going to be concentrating on natural cures, homeopathic cures, real nursing, as you've said to me that you want to bring back. And you've touched on a point there, is as I said, I would like to see all the nurses coming under the common law, and all being trained themselves in how to handle aggression from the statute, the NHS and different areas. And Mick, that would be an interesting area in which you and Kate can. I know you've probably spoken about it already, but it'd be nice to let everybody know, how we can integrate the common law with the nursing system, so that we got free people that are for the people and not just for anybody else. Mick, what would you like to
Well, I think what Kate's doing is she's providing a model of best practice. And you see the difference between an authoritarian system that has, and I don't know if you know this, but I've worked with the NHS, and the NHS are more hierarchical than the military. When I look at who will talk to who and who won't work with who. So in reality, if you have a model of excellence that is worth following, it's amazing how people follow it naturally because they know it's good for them. But when you turn it the other way around and it becomes hierarchical, the challenge that you have is exactly that someone just by the nature of their appointment can dictate a whole treatment plan. And whether or not that treatment plan caters for the individual is irrelevant. That's the order followers' perfect space, because at that point they don't become accountable. Ultimately the whole essence of what Kate's doing, from my perspective, is giving people a voice, but also giving people a model to copy. And of course, that model, if it's intelligent, is out of date the moment it's written. So, when you look at what we're doing with common law, with peace constables, and we look at what we're doing with, certainly with the mental health, as we start to wheel out our mental health model, What we want people to be able to do is say that's really worth copying. So let's copy it. And that's, for me, is the perfect way round, not the other way around, where someone tells you which protocol needs to be done for a specific reason and no one gets the opportunity to challenge it. That can't be right.
It is. And you know what Mick's saying there about, so what happens is they talk about evidence-based practice, which is, first of all, it's evidence-based on whichever pharmaceutical company wants their drug pushing. And if you actually look at psychiatry itself, there is nothing put on diet, nothing. And there are studies out there that have been done on catatonic, hebephrenic, paranoid, and simple schizophrenics, where all gluten was removed from the diet and the patients were weaned off their drugs and exhibited absolutely no symptoms that would validate the diagnosis they'd been given. Now, when that particular psychiatrist took that to the board, he was ordered to put them back on it, and disciplinary followed. And that's the same with acute depression. Vitamin B3 in very, very large doses, and there's been studies on it, has had profound effects on this. And like B3 is found in like cashew nuts. So I can't remember whether it's 1 or 2 handfuls of cashew nuts is equivalent to 1 dose of Prozac. And then when you start to look at the trials of these drugs and how long they've gone on for, now psychiatry in itself is a clinical area that makes so much money and profit.
Yeah. If
you go into the prisons, what do you have in the prisons? You've got lots of veterans, lots of them that have got PTSD, as you know, Mick, and what they're actually given, the budget for their diet is horrific for the prisoners. And many of them suffer from hypoglycemia. So when your blood sugar drops, we all start to feel agitated, and you can get aggressive. And that's one of the symptoms of low blood sugar. So lots of prisoners have undiagnosed low, think of O for low, glycemia, low blood sugar. And that's why you get a lot of them that have got problems with alcohol addiction. They then get very aggressive when they start to come down from that. So they all end up in prison. And what do they give them? They give them the most appalling diet of white bread, which is really high glycemic load, which pushes their blood sugar right up. Then they have to secrete loads more insulin to get the blood sugar down. So they get all these spikes and troughs. And what does that lead to? Depression, aggression. And what do? They give them more psychiatric drugs. So it's just like going round and round and round in a market. There's nothing in there that's about looking at nutrition, clean water, clean air, clean food, clean mind, not watching not sitting on computer programs, these games that switch up all your frontal lobe and aggression. But it's all about putting a piece of wallpaper over a damp spot, because who is this really furnishing? None of the healthcare system. And incidentally, the NMC, the Nursing Midwifery Council, was taken over by the government in 2001. That should ring alarm bells. When you look back through times of tyranny, through history, East Berlin, the Second World War, Pinochet's time, Soviet Russia, they always take over the healthcare system. They always change the Mental Health Act that you only need 1 doctor. But they've done that. Now the government's taken over the NHS. People, I heard a gentleman talking about, open the NHS, let's get on with the backlog. Last year, I don't know whether you remember, Mick, Dr. Adil, this is one of the things that people don't remember about Dr. Adil. He worked on all this, and he said to me, we are already 7 years behind in treatments with the NHS, and we do not have the staff or the finances or the facilities, all of it, to catch up. Now I believe they're 12 years behind. Mental health in children in Sussex alone is increased by 53%. Eating disorders in children by over 600%. They're not children forever. They grow into adults.
And what's the autism? It's especially one that I've been just looking at recently. That's gone crazy, hasn't it?
Well, it has, but I would question some of that, because I'm going to say this, and I'm sorry if I offend you teachers out there, but many of you teachers out there did sign up for a year's contract to be tested twice a week and get paid for it. And yes, you drove up the numbers whilst getting a little backhander. And remember that, artificial intelligence frontline, within 5 years is going to be here. So you'll only need one artificial intelligence teacher for the entire nation of that year group. So all you teachers are going to be out of a job, and it'll be your own fault. But going back to autism, what happens is when children are statemented in schools, that particular school gets more money for that child. So I will always argue about when these kids are diagnosed, are they actually autistic? Do they have retained reflexes? If you don't know what that is, go and have a look on inpp.org.uk. Very, very interesting. But I think what's happening is you're seeing a huge increase in attempted and successful suicides in children. Like I say, 600% increase in eating disorders. You're seeing, just like I say, in Sussex alone, 53% increase in psychiatric disorders in children. All of the outreach facilities for children in Sussex have been closed. So these kids are attempting suicide or suffering depression, and they're just sitting in hospital, which is no place, nor rehabilitation. So yet again, we're back to, let's not cure it. Let's not look at what's going on. Let's just put a damp spot over it. Let's just give them all medication and leave them as zombies. And there's a classic one, children with ADHD, which is, I believe ADHD is like attention deficit dad disorder. You know, where are the dads? Get in there. So what they do,
you know, Kate, attention deficit is impossible.
Exactly.
There's no way. You know, and I teach mindset.
Just a label to get more money.
It is impossible to stop paying attention.
Exactly.
It's a matter of what you pay attention to for what purpose. And for me, you know, I go straight back to the schools, because ultimately there is no such thing as a poor learner. There is only a poor learning environment.
Absolutely. And a crap teacher. Thank you.
What I
was going to say was, those kids, what do they give them? They give them Ritalin, which causes microcephaly, causes the brain to shrink, never tested or licensed for kids. But they give it to them. Do you know why? All the kids in care in America, they're nearly all on Ritalin. Because it subdues them, shuts them up, makes them easy. And so it is shocking. And this is where, you know, I'm a great believer now. If you've trashed the system yourself, I know lots of families now are all getting together, and they're homeschooling in big groups. And I live near Forest Row, which is all your what are they? Scientology. Say what you want about them, but they're fantastic homeschoolers. And then they all come together in the afternoon, and these kids do activities together, swimming, horseback riding. But I agree, Mick, you know, attention deficit, what a load of old rubbish.
You can't, it's impossible.
You get like a female teacher in a school, primary school, with a load of boys. Boys need to be taught by men. They need to be taught by men. And now we'll have everything with a ist after it. I'll have all the feminists, socialists all coming out after me. I'm not women's lib. At all. I'm sorry, don't recruit me into it. But I've got 2 boys, 2 girls, and I had a boy and a girl twins in the middle. They are profoundly different. You can take all the swords away from boys you like. They'll find a stick and pretend it's a sword. They'll make it with Lego. Yeah. Boys need to run and fill a space. Girls can be
worn out.
They do. And girls sit in the corner plotting.
Yeah, well,
I have an ex-girlfriend who was a teacher, and what never ceased to amaze me was on PE, they weren't allowed to shout. And I said, well, how do they let off steam? You know,
well, Mick, this is something I actually wanted to go on from what Kate was saying. You know, knowing your expertise in those kind of fields.
Well, one of them is certainly about accelerated learning and creating environments for accelerated learning. And the bottom line is to make people resilient. If you don't feed them well, and you don't give them strategies for sleeping that allow them to sleep properly, and you don't work them hard physically, and then you never teach them how to work in, so you don't teach them how to introspect, they don't become resilient.
Exactly. An army marches on its stomach.
Absolutely. And you see, isn't it interesting that as you go up further up the tree, if you look at international athletes that are a business, if you like, that those are the 4 pillars of what they do with those athletes, because they know that they make people resilient.
Djokovic. Go read Djokovic's book about his diet.
Yeah. And if you don't do that, then, you know, literally, as you come back to ground zero, the average punter if they don't get treated the same way, then people will sort of start to worry about, we need to give them more money, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. When in reality, you could use those basic 4 principles to produce any form of resilience if you knew how to apply them.
That's really interesting. You know, the other thing is, of course, after midnight, all your body starts to regenerate. That's exactly what it does. In the day, we rely on the electrical field from the sun to make the fluid in the mitochondria. Trees do it differently. Dogs do it differently. At night, it changes again. So when we're asleep, the brain uses the glymphatic system. The body uses the lymphatic system. And the fluid in the brain, it goes in all the interstitial spaces and it cleans the brain. And that's how it's done. And it can only do it when you're unconscious, when you're completely asleep. And that's why when you haven't had enough sleep, you have this really low grade headache and thick head and you don't feel well. And of course, when you're tired, you release adrenaline and cortisol, which is good for if there's a tiger coming, fright and flight. But long term, makes all your blood vessels hard, starts to destroy your body, and it pushes down your thyroid. So Mick's right, you know, good sleep. And what do people do? They've got a telly in their bedroom. The only thing that should be in your bedroom is a good man or a good woman. Possibly a cat on the end of
You're
your bed.
after getting us spoiled, Kate. You are today.
But it's true. It's true. We're not supposed to be on our own. It's not natural.
No,
we're
it
supposed
isn't.
to couple up.
You know,
the man is the head, the woman's the neck. She can't turn without him. He can't turn without her. I don't mean I'm not a feminist and all the rest of it. Women. I'm not talking about women being abused. But this whole feminist movement's destroyed our men, and we're seeing it now. They don't know what to do. And
but we're seeing it now, Kate, because we don't have anything that even remotely resembles a rite of passage, which boys need to turn into men. And of course, even if you look at the multiple intelligences that we have with Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, you know, you should at some point in your life go through that rite of passage as a boy into a man. Now, if you're an artist, that means you should be showing your art. It might mean that you push yourself over certain thresholds. But all of these are really important at the level of challenging yourself and growing up and turning or coming into manhood. I'm not saying that everyone wants to necessarily go out with a spear and kill a lion on the estate, you know, because we're not all made of that stuff. But there are always different variations of that rite of passage. I think a lot of women pass into that when they go through childbirth. Yeah, they have their own rite of passage, which is feminine. But we're definitely, if I look at the boys now, and you chat to some of the young boys, I mean, my grandkids, you know, they've had that rite of passage because of the parentage that they've had.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Jewish, I believe that's what bar mitzvah is. That's why they have the bar mitzvah. I was very honoured and very privileged to spend a couple of days staying with the Amish with an elder, and it's really interesting the way they do it. We don't do it. I see all these blokes sitting in Marks and Spencer's on a chair waiting for their wives on a Saturday. She comes out, she goes, well, what do you think? He's got, yeah. I never take a bloke shopping. Never. It just shouldn't happen. You've all sat on a Marks and Spencer's chair. I just know it. I can feel it through the camera. But it is, and it's like the whole family unit's been broken down.
I think that's one of the things that while we're in these whole problems, but the plan has been so complete, the breakdown of the family unit, you know, and the education system being neutralized and not designed to reinforce.
Well, and also, John, at the age of 6. You don't know what masturbation is at the age of 6. You probably don't know what it is at the age of 8 or 9. Yeah. You know, and then you're in your most informative years, your sponge years where you're 13 and someone is now introducing you to the world of non-binary, LBGT. You don't know your arse from your elbow at that age. I mean, I didn't grow up until I was about 35. But it's
actually
almost
younger than that. It's younger than that, you know, they bring it into primary schools. I objected to it when my children were in primary school. And I objected because nowhere in the curriculum is abstinence until you're in a loving, stable relationship.
Yeah,
nowhere.
Exactly. You know, Kate, one of our girls came home and she said, you know, I'm not sure whether I'm this or whether I'm that. And I said, well, then, you know, ultimately, where are you getting this dialogue from? And this is a lot of dialogue that's not necessarily governed by anyone that is directing it in a learning way. You know, if you get two pieces of different information in a learning environment, they cancel each other out. They install confusion. And at that point, you become highly suggestible if you're looking for an answer. And that's got to come from someone who has a vested interest in you. And of course, when you're boarding or whether you're at school, if you don't get the piece of information you want, you make it up as you go along, and it becomes a belief.
Well, they're actually, my daughter's school, she went to a private school. She got a scholarship. I believe it's the one where Margaret Thatcher went. Anyway, they had some person visit who was telling them that if anyone says gay, report it to the police. It's homophobic, blah, blah, blah. And then all the girls, I don't know what went on them, but they were all, you don't know you are till you've tried it. You don't know if you're not gay till you've tried it. And mine went to a church school before that. And I'm not, listen, I've got my nephew's gay. But so everyone's very clear on my position here, very clear on my position. For me personally, I don't have a problem if that's what you are and that's what you are. That's okay. We're all God's children. There's a lot of things that have gone on in this world where we've had male aborted fetus, immortalized cell lines injected into women, into females, female aborted into males. We've had a load of stuff done with us, all the estrogens, whatever the reason. Maybe that's just the way you ate. I'm not talking about that, so don't try and get me on any of it. But I will say this. You are genetically male or you are genetically female. I don't care what you have cut off or stuck on. You're still a male or a female. I don't run around every summer and say, it's heterosexual day. I want to drink lots and act appallingly, which is what I've seen in Brighton. Not everybody.
Thank you.
not every day, not everyone. I've seen it in Brighton. It's a fun day, but I've also seen, blokes with their hands down each other's drawers. There's kids there. But the point is, whatever. Why do we have to have a day with a rainbow flag? Actually, there is a colour missing out of it. It's only 6 colours. Why do we have to have a day where we're not allowed to say we're hetero? It's Gay Pride Day, and they're calling for us not to be allowed to say that we're hetero that day. We've all got to be non-whatever this. No, I like blokes. I'm heterosexual. That's who I am. And I don't run around in August and say it's heterosexual day today. And I don't want anyone to say it's hetero day, so you're not allowed to be gay today. You're hetero. And that's the end of it. I don't do that. So stop ramming it down my throat. Go do what you want to do, but you don't own my life. And I am not going to say on your day that I'm anything other than a bloke-loving woman. And that's the end of it. And I was born female, and no matter what I do to my body, I'll die female. And if you're born with a man with an appendage and a couple of grapes, you'll die male. Even if you have it chopped off, you're a man. In my eyes, you're a man. If you want to identify and say you're a woman because you've had a change, that's all right. But genetically, you're a man. So I don't agree with all this letting men. I threw javelin through school. I was the best at it in my year, and then I threw in athletic competitions. I would be deeply offended if men can perform in female sports because they have an unfair advantage.
Completely
You've got
unfair,
an unfair advantage.
No, but it's ridiculous. Can
I say this because you're a military man? Let me really offend everybody now. Mick, I'm just going to give you, this is my opinion. I personally don't agree with women on the front line in the military because it is a genetic makeup of a man to protect a woman. That's what he does. So if a man is out there and there's a woman next to him, I think it compromises people. I think no matter how much you train somebody, I think it's compromising to have a load of women on the front line. In the days I've gone old, I'd be an old hag working in the battle, cooking up the meat for the soldiers.
It's not only that, Kate, to be honest with you. If you actually go to the extreme elements, the teeth arm elements of the military, if you put pound for pound, male alongside female, I might be vilified for this now, but I can assure you it's based on experience. When you're carrying 120 pounds worth of ammunition over 50 miles and you're expected to do some of the tasks that you have to do, a lot of the girls won't be there. because
we should be at home spreading the butties.
Yeah, well, they can't cut it at that level. And I worked alongside the likes of Dame Kelly Holmes. You know, I took Dame Kelly Holmes through one of her programs when I was at the PT school, and we had some very, very elite, very robust women, and I love them all, by the way, and admire what they did. And to even survive in that space, you know, it is pretty tough anyway. But equally, when push comes to shove, that's a very, very small fraction of the population. And even then, if you put them in extreme environments with the most extreme males, they wouldn't cut it. Simple as that.
Yeah, and so we've got all this blurring now. And as I've got 2 boys and 2 girls...
Why can't we enjoy the difference? That's
exactly. Do you know my son, the one who's very famous for lying about me, but for the audience here, he has actually... He came back to my house with his new girlfriend. He wanted me to introduce her to me and pay his respects to our dead cat, Mo. And, you know, that took a lot of guts for him to just turn up at my door. Well, it just shows you he knows me very well. That, you know, as soon as he did it, it was behind me because he's got to forgive himself. But I remember him coming home one time from Eton because, he did go to that school where they're all brainwashed. But that elite school for the world leaders. And he said to me, he had this girlfriend at the time. We were sitting around the dinner table. So if he denies this, I'll get the others to corroborate. He said, we'll be getting married. She'll be having 10 children and they'll all be homeschooled. I said, have you asked her about that? She'll do as she's told. Yeah, right.
That's a nice idea.
I'm just going to alter it for one last subject. That we're getting a lot of questions on Kate and Mick on this. Is the people are questioning that the makeup of the vaccines is actually starting to change, and that Pfizer seems to have been getting a lot of graphene oxide in. I wondered if you could give us an opinion on that, Kate, and how that is affecting the actual what that mRNA gene therapy does.
First of all, it's not a vaccine. We must never call it a vaccine.
No, it's a gene therapy. Yeah.
The device, it fulfills the legal definition to be a device, and it goes into your ribosomes, the protein-making machinery of your cells, and it starts to make new viral components that shouldn't be there. Spike proteins, not natural. There's only 3 human ones. It's very unnatural. They don't even know what it will do. It doesn't switch off. And then it's going to keep ripping apart your cells, basically, and your cells till they're all sticking out of your cells. The graphene oxide, I believe it was the Lapita Columbia experiment, research, and they've done a visual, and they found with a visual using 2 microscopes. So this is not chemical. It's not being chemically analyzed at the moment, but they are doing that. It's been visual analyzed, and it had over, I believe, 99% in. And the way it works, the property of it is that same thing, that it gives off an electrical charge. So they're not telling you what's in these injections. It's bioengineering. They're not telling you what's inside of it. Even the chemicals that they are listing, they haven't been tested for their efficacy. That means they haven't been tested together to see what happens. I can't see what's conducive to health in there. One of the injections it's a blank sheet, the ingredients. The hydrogel that's inside, it goes in with the lipid nanoparticles, so it kind of tricks your body so your body doesn't degrade it. And that hydrogel is your nanobot. It acts as the conduit. The little nanobot that's in there has an electrical charge off it, so it's like a little antenna, so it can transmit and it can
that's what I was told. I'm asking is that I was told that there's less about like nanobots, but the fact that the graphene in there actually turns your body into an aerial and makes you more susceptible.
So if you imagine your old analog TVs, you would have had to smack the top, to get the aerial to pick up a signal. Well, this is digital. So this new technology, this 5G, which is not a telecommunications, I believe engineers are saying, no, your phone had burst into flames. This is like DARPA using this kind of technology, HARP. So that's going to send a digital beam, and you're going to just be sitting there. So I mean, when you get in your car with your mobile phone and your new car, your key, every cell tower you go past, these 5G, it's picking you up, it's tracking you, it can pick you up. But I've read loads on that 60 gigahertz and up. And you've got the military weapon that the army use. I'm sure Mick can talk about it, the Growler, which takes out all physiological and neurological life form, and it can be fired from a vehicle or an aircraft. And then in Iraq, they used the voice of Allah, which is a certain frequency where the people hear, but they think it's coming from inside their heads. And in there was a company that was found guilty in the courts of using this in their store, telling people, oh yeah, you like that, buy that. And their sales shot through the roof. They were using this frequency, this technology. There's a patent on it. But this technology in 1976, the American government published a document stating that this low-level microwave radiation causes endless negative effects to the health. Dr. Barry Trower said within 3 generations, only 1 in 8 babies will be born healthy. And Professor Moskulu took it further and said, within 5 generations, entire species will be extinct. Well, if they're going to put out this 5G, this 60 gigahertz and on, you're sitting like an antenna. There are patents out there that are live, and I have had them checked by a patent officer, where they can, it's the whole Minority Report thing, where they can pick up your brainwaves, put them through a computer, and it's translated into words, and they know what you're thinking. And then on 2019 United Nations public address by Boris Johnson, he actually stated, we have the technology, the Google of things, the internet of things, it'll watch your every move, it can pick up your every thought. And England, the UK, is the epicenter for all this technology. He said we lead in this technology. So I personally, if you look at all the evidence there, there's no rhyme and reason for it to be in there. And the evidence is it can only be like tracking. And are we going to be uploading as well as downloading? And then the whole...
I think the potential is there. I mean, I'll bow to Mick on this with the weapons capability. But if the fact that you're acting as a giant aerial, as far as I can understand it, is that... so far is it can affect your mood. It can affect the way you react in certain situations. But, it's not like going to switch you on to kill someone. But one thing I think, Mick, is about what's been happening around us is making people ill. And I think,
and of course, Kate has articulated everything far better than I would have done. I was never really involved in that element of the military anyway. And because I resigned in 2004, I think even the technology since then has advanced unbelievably. And as I chat to other people, I've never, someone once said to me that if you realise just how advanced AI was, you'd be horrified. And I think they're on the mark when it comes to that. You work on the premise that if they've really planned this out the way they planned it out, they have to have a way of taking large groups of people out very, very quickly, because it would only take 1 million people to turn this around.
And once that 5G is all up and running, it's used for crowd control. All they have to do is switch it up, and you'll start to feel incredibly unwell, nauseous,
you have to leave the area.
Yeah, disorientated, your ears. And I know when I go to London, I always feel really wiped out when I come back.
I'm done in for a day after that. I was done in on Tuesday.
Me too, Mick. I was really, really tired. It's really bizarre.
I mean, and we'll come to that. You actually did some experimentation with that, with a meter that reads the radioactive particles. It was something incredible. Between
it was huge. It was something like 4 or 5 times higher than it should be, and it's a cumulative. In UNICEF even did some studies. These are all there, peer-reviewed and military papers. Even UNICEF did some studies of that accumulative effect of low-wave microwave radiation. and it affects every single organ in your body, as well as your circadian rhythm, the rhythm that your body does. And women have more circadian rhythms than men. It was used in the Cold War. So it's going to affect everything bit by bit. And but the whole crowd control part of it, even if people did want to really get up and rise up, once that's in, and if you've got a nice antenna for it, and they start turning that up, they could literally just take out a load of people all at once. And that is what it's capable of. It's like, once it's all in capacity, it's like having a gun at the front of your head, on top of your head, either side of your head, at the back of your head. And then it can just literally take you out. And if you look at, I'm sorry, if there's anybody out there now still thinking that 2 planes hit Twin Towers, I can't help you. I worked for an airline for 10 years. I was married for 17, with him for 22. My ex-husband had a PhD in computer science, part of the 9/11 Truth Coalition. It was so obvious that was a Fred Dibney controlled demolition. I mean, it was right there in front, and the whole Tower 7. So please, if you're watching
we
this,
can't blame it on Fred. We can't blame it on Fred.
No. So when anyone now wants to go, no, it's an aeroplane, I just zone out, because I just think, oh, do be quiet. But you know, that whole thing of, you can use direct energy weapons, which is what it is, to completely take a building with steel, that those fires were not burning high enough to melt steel, and aviation fuel, even at the top temperature that it would burn at, would not be high enough to melt steel. So you imagine, I love it when I talk about this, because people go, actually, it's mental, go on, zone out. But if you imagine, if you want to clear out whole areas of people and their houses, they could literally hit your house with this direct energy weapon. You'd be found inside dead, and your pets, and they'll go, oh, it's a virus. That whole area's all had the virus. They're all dead in their houses. I was told they are actually training up firemen to enter our homes now, different to what they normally would. And then you could demolish entire areas, because they took everything down from that building. So it's a fantastic weapon to use, depending on how high they use it. But it is all there, Mick. You're right, and they're a good 50 years ahead of what we think they are.
Yeah, they always have been, haven't they? Really, when you look at some of the technology that we have access to now, this is old technology.
It is.
Yeah.
This is a real man. He's been having a jolly old time with the other Chihuahua that's in season, but this one's been sorted. So he's been at it all day, dawn till dusk.
Right. Well, we'll bring it to a close there today. It's been absolutely lovely having you on, Kate.
I'm so glad to see Mick's better. And I was so impressed that Vicky answered the phone.
Naturally so.
I think he's going to claim now, Kate, after this discussion, that he was 5G'd.
Well, you know what? It literally, you know, there are studies done. It absorbs all of the amniotic fluid. And last year up in, I think it was Bolton or Burnley, there was 10 babies born in 1 week, 3 in one hospital, 7 in another, all at term, all stillborn with no amniotic fluid. And the midwives were scratching their heads. This is where, if you look in the Control of Infectious Diseases Act 1984, they've included radiation. When I've heard nurses say, oh, we don't want to talk about 5G or paedophilia, then you're not the nurses that we want on the British Nursing Alliance, because nurses need to be able to recognise and understand the disease process of what's going on with radiation poisoning and accumulative, and how it not only affects that person, but affects the unborn child. And just to leave you with one point, the egg that made you, Jonathan, into Jonathan Miller was inside your grandmother. Yeah. So shortly after your grandmother conceived your mum, the eggs that were going to make you were in her. So those eggs have been exposed to everything your gran was exposed to, then your mum was exposed to, and now you've been exposed to in your life. So these are the things that damage our DNA and make us susceptible to disease. And this is why we need to protect the unborn child and our children.
Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating subject, and we'd like to have you on again, Kate. And it is unfortunately Anna was supposed to join us. I know your new compatriot in
Comrades.
arms. Sorry,
We're new comrades.
Yeah.
Comrade
She's a good girl, Anna.
yeah, and Anna is she's been called away to deal with something, but Anna de Bousseray was supposed to be here. We're sorry that we lost also Dolores through internet problems, but it was great to have you on, Kate, and we'd like to have you on again sometime
John,
soon.
could you tell all your viewers, every time you see anybody, any nurse, doctor, professional in their uniform, any cop, anyone in their uniform, even the Queen and Kate, that injection does not have authorization to market it. It does not have authorization. Therefore, by wearing a badge saying, I am vaccinated, they're advertising it. They're coercing you using their professional stance, their uniform, and it's not allowed. So tell them, get it off. Walk in authority.
Well, Mick will lead the Guardians 300 into saying that. Well, I'd like to say goodbye to everybody, and what we'll do is we'll be back next week, and it's fascinating to have Kate involved, and Mick, thank you very much for the updates on the Guardians 300 and the Commonwealth Goal. Anyway,
thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.